Hello. So to continue off where I left, continue off. So to continue from where I left off last time, what kind of cultural fears are reflected in Korean horror films? I feel like this is a pretty interesting topic to talk about because um, not a lot of people know about Korean horror films, despite Korea having a fairly big horror movie market. Um, I feel like Korean horror films have not gotten a lot of exposure outside of Korea. Um, while Japanese films like Ju-on and Ringu found huge success as the American remakes, The Grudge and The Ring, respectively, only the Korean films Changhwa Hongryun, or A Tale of Two Sisters, and Into the Mirror found no success, mediocre success, as the remakes, The Uninvited, and Mirrors, respectively. Um, I guess they came at a time when the Asian horror remake trend was kind of falling off, and they were quickly made and quickly forgotten. So, not a lot of people know about Korean horror films. So, I'm going to briefly skim over one overarching theme in Korean horror films and what I think that reflects of Korean culture. So, when you speak about Asian horror films, one of the most prominent things people will talk about are ghosts. So, I feel like American ghosts, our ghost lore, is very unspecific. That is, our ghosts don't have the detailed lore that Korean ghosts have. They're not as well defined or specific. American ghosts just kind of haunt abandoned places, creepy places, or places where bad things have happened. Um, they seem to represent unfinished business or a need for justice or revenge. And Korean ghosts, or Kuishin, are the same. But where they differ are that Korean ghosts have types. So there are Murguishin, or water ghosts, who grab your feet when you're swimming and drown you. Uh, these ghosts are said to reflect the Korean belief that drowning is an absolutely terrible way to die. I think that's a fairly universal belief. Um, and given that Korea is a peninsula surrounded on all sides, almost all sides, besides North Korea, by water, um, it's not surprising that this fear would be widely spread. And you'll find similar lore of evil things that drown you in countries that are surrounded by water, such as Japan's Kappa, or either Ireland or Scotland's, I think it's called the Selkie, which is a horse that when you ride it, it runs towards the nearest water source and drowns you. Horrible. Um, and a fun aside is that while we have the saying in America, crabs in the bucket, for people who pull other people down to their level or try to refuse the success of other people based on their own failures or their own insecurities. They kind of minimize the success of other people. A Korean saying that is very similar is water ghost tactics, where you're pulling people down to prevent them from reaching or obtaining success. Um, Another kind of ghost are the Talgyal which are also known as egg ghosts, which I found the description very confusing, but I think they look like eggs, and I think if you see them, you die. That one confused me, I'm not sure. And the last two kinds of ghosts, out of all the four ghosts, are both male and female unmarried ghosts, which reflects the cultural belief that marrying someone and having babies are one of the fundamentally important parts of life. So the most common type of ghost is, as you would think if you have seen any Asian horror films, the deathly pale female ghost. The Korean version of these female ghosts have red lips, blood red lips, and they're dressed all in white. They wear their hair down because the updo, or like wearing your hair up, was more acceptable among married women in Korean history. So if you're unmarried, you wore your hair down. These ghosts are most often virgins, which is, I suppose, their unfinished business, the reason they stay around. They didn't ever shack up with a dude or get laid. They didn't fulfill their purpose of being a woman and having a child. So yeah, that's kind of the cultural foundation of where these ghosts come from. And I think that the presence of vengeful female ghosts or vengeful female spirits shown in movies like Whispering Corridors, Memento Mori, The Voice, White, or The Ghost, and I'm sure there are many more horror movies that I haven't mentioned, reflect a strong cultural idea. So why the fascination with vengeful female ghosts? I think there are a few potential explanations. Is it because women are typically viewed as more emotional and than compared to males, so perhaps they have more of a reason to stay behind after death, creating angry, emotional spirits that are unwilling to listen to logic? I don't know how accurate that is, but it seems maybe possible. I think that if the ghosts are the result of unfinished business, then the abundance of female ghosts reflects maybe how difficult life is for women in Asia when compared to the lives of males. So going deeper into this topic, while talk about gender equality can be very incendiary, I'm going to try to just focus on the facts and stay away from any anecdotal evidence that I've encountered. So, Korea is a society founded on Confucian ideals. That is, that men are the ones who go to work and women are the ones who stay at home. And while the culture is changing to be more equitable, as with any foundational ideology, the Confucian ideology remains fairly strong in Korean culture. The number of female CEOs, the earnings of women compared to men, and the number of females in the workplace lag behind many other OECD countries. The cutthroat competition in the workplace causes women to be very hesitant to use their maternity leave, though this is changing. But in the past, many women have dropped out of the workplace in order to have kids and have found it incredibly difficult or even impossible to return to the workforce once they are ready to return. The World Economic Forum in 2013 rated South Korea 111th out of 136 countries based on gender equity. And now, I can't really comment on any of this. All the information is what I found on the internet. And being that I'm not Korean and I'm not a woman and I'm only really a visitor who's been in Korea a very short time, I don't know how accurate or valid any of this research is. But the overwhelming sentiment on gender equity is that women have a little bit of a harder time in Korea when compared to males. Interestingly enough, though, when I was discussing gender roles in dating with my students and having my students tell me what they knew of gender roles or what were some examples of gender roles, one student put up her hand and said that in the past, men and women used to be unequal. Men were above women, women were below men. But now, in Korea, there is equality between the genders. And I know that men are conscripted into army service where women aren't. So I think it's difficult to actually discuss. There's a lot of intricacies that I'm not aware of. And so I can't really accurately state how much equity there is. But regardless of the actual status of equity, gender equity in Korea, I think that there's a lot of history and unique factors where women face more pressure than males do. So I think that the ubiquitous presence of female ghosts that are vengeful in Korean and actually most Asian horror films reflect a cultural fear that women will rise above their social bonds and strike back against the patriarchal forces that held them back in life. If you think about it, we have women like Kayako Sake from The Grudge or Ju-on, who was beaten to death by her husband. We have Sadako Yamamura from Ringu, the Japanese horror film, who was left in a well, imprisoned in a well to die. It seems to me that these punishments that these characters face are reflective or a metaphor for the struggles that women face in life or the injustices that women face in these societies. And the ghosts that return after their death or fear that these oppressed females will strike back against their oppressors. I think we have a similar phenomenon in American horror with the vengeful female trope. This is seen in movies like I Spit on Your Grave. Though, in the case of revenge films, we're typically rooting for the vengeful female, where in these horror ghost movies, we're supposed to be scared of the vengeful female. So I guess take that as you will. Um, Perhaps there are other reasons for the commonality of the vengeful female spirit. A fear of death is pretty common here. For example, the number 4 sounds like the Chinese word for death. So many buildings have an F floor instead of a 4th floor. But I think there's something else at play here, as it's not just ghosts or death that are feared, but specifically female ghosts, which are remarkably common. Maybe Asian men just aren't as scary as Asian women. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of the conclusion that I've come to, is it's based on this gender inequity, and it's kind of women rising against the bonds that they face in life. But who knows if that's true or accurate in any way. It's just my thoughts. Yeah, so thanks for watching.